gonna scooch this up just a smidgen. Who'd have thought that there were so many different kinds of ink? I love ink. I love walking into our store and seeing the rainbow that is on our wall. Oh, there we go. That's better lighting there. Had the wrong lights on. I love seeing the rainbow. I love color. I love playing with ink. I've often said that if I were ever stranded on a deserted island, the one thing that I would want in my crafty stash would be my stencils. But to go with those stencils, I would absolutely need ink. And I am a little bit of an ink junkie. I am a self-proclaimed complete set syndrome type of crafter when it comes to my inks. Trying to rectify that because really, in reality, you do not need a complete set. And that is me, the store owner, also saying that. That is me, the crafter and the friend, saying that. Inks do have a shelf life. And so you want to make sure you are using your inks. You want to make sure that you're choosing the colors and the combinations and the types of inks that you are going to use over and over and over again. Because if you don't, then they could dry out. Even if they're sealed, they could dry out. They could go bad. Sorry, I need to flip that around. Being upside down was bothering me. But anyways, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And we have had, it's one of the most common questions that we get when people come in. They're like, okay, I want to start stamping. What do I need? I want to do this project. What do I need? And unfortunately, it is a little bit of a conversation that I have with customers when we are talking about inks. If you come in and say to me, okay, I need some new ink, what do you recommend? My question back to you is tell me more about what you are crafting, because inks do different things. Now, I did invite you when I did the initial post for this live tonight to grab a notebook, to grab a pen or a pencil or something to write. I have also worked on a handy dandy little handout. These are kind of my notes for tonight. I did realize I forgot something, so I need to go in and update that. But definitely take your own notes. I would love to see all your questions tonight. And I know Matt will not like this, but if we go longer than an hour, we go longer than an hour. But I did do these notes. I will post these, and we're going to start building a resource center on our website where things like this are going to be stored. So hello, everyone. As you are joining, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Excuse me. Now that I've got these all on my table, I need to get them out of the way. And we will just start talking about inks and the different reasons why you would need an ink. And again, definitely please post your comments, your questions in the comments here. I am able to see them. And if I go too fast, let me know and I can go over things a second time. And now I'm losing track because I've stacked things differently. All right, I'm going to leave these guys. I'm going to take these guys out. Maybe I'll just do this. Take these guys out. Because we're going to start with this little selection here. I do want these guys. I do want these guys. All right. So, like I said, the first question I always ask when someone wants me to talk to them about inks is, what are you using them for? Are you stamping? Are you ink blending? Are you embossing? Lots of different, are you using them in a stencil? Are you Are you trying to create patterns? Those things really help me to share the information. And for argument's sake, for right now, I'm going to pretend that you said to me, okay, the first thing I want to do with my inks is stamp. I've got my clear acrylic stamps. This is a set from Concord and Ninth. I've got my set here from one of my sets. I've got some Catherine Pooler here, and I've got some sentiments. So if you are telling me that you are, if you want a stamp, you want color, you want a rainbow of things, then this is where we're going to start. And again, as people are joining, hello, thank you for joining me tonight. I love my inks, I love my color, and this is probably where you have the most choice in terms of what you can choose and what options are available to you. At the end of the day, it does come down to personal preference when we are just looking at basic stamping inks. What colors do you like? What kind of pad do you like? And so I encourage you, and this is one of the several reasons why we tend to carry the cubes over the full-size pads, though we do have full-size pads as well. It's so that you can try a couple of different things to figure out what you like. And I will come back to you again and say, do not feel like you need to stick with one brand. Do not feel like you need to get the whole set of that brand. There are so many different things and you want to be able to use them. So I would say, buy a few of this one, a few of that one, see what you like, and then build from there. What are the differences? So in a stamping ink, most stamping inks, and I would say again, these are the most common colored inks that you are going to see. I'm just sorting them here because there are a couple of different kinds. These are all. So the first thing I will ask you after I figure out that you are looking to stamp color is, do you like a squishy pad or do you like a more firm pad? And this is where the line starts to divide. And you know what? This one is a bit of a red herring. So I'm actually going to take that one out and keep it in this family over here. Catherine Pooler, the Simon Hurley Stellar inks, and the Concord and Ninth inks are they are what is called a firm foam pad. And Diane says she's always looking for inks to have a sharp image when stamped. So I'll show you, but that may mean that you lean towards this firm foam pad. And I'm going to pull out this one. It's going to be a little hard to see. Let me see if I can zoom in here just a little bit. So this is the Concord and Ninth ink, and I'm looking at it at the profile. I'm going to use this finger so you know what, let me get a baby wipe handy so I can clean my fingers. I will be inky by the end of the night, but I'm totally okay with that. So a foam pad is very squishy. You can see I'm squishing that. The pads are a little bit juicy. They come out very well on your stamping device, or in this case, my finger. And sometimes they do leave these little ghosting marks behind as the ink resettles. Think of this like a sponge. It is very spongy and squishy. The Simon Hurley ones, same thing. They're very squishy, very soft. Gives you lots and lots of ink coverage. And oh, I didn't open this one. Okay, we'll stick with succulent. I want to see what this new color looks like though. Catherine Pooler is the same, so you can tell that they've got that squishy foam pad. Give you lots of great inky juiciness. But I will tell you, as someone who learned about stamping with felt pads, I really struggled making the switch over to foam because I do find them at times too squishy, and this is where it comes down to a preference. Here, let me zoom back out again. Going over here, let's pull this guy. So in comparison, sorry, I'm gonna go back in. The felt, this side here, the 49 Market, Gina, Hero, Lawn Fawn, these are made of felt. So where these were spongy, squishy foam, this is felt. And so it's not quite as squishy. It's got layers and layers of felt there that is holding in the ink. Yeah, it's going to be one of those colorful finger nights. That doesn't mean that with a felt pad, whoops, and now I'm upside down, that you're not going to get good coverage. It does come down to what your comfort level is. Sorry, just grabbing a paper towel, clean up this here. Ellen says she looks for pretty purple colors. Well, that 100% is where it comes down to. So first and foremost, you need to understand whether you are a firm person, a felt person, or if you're a squishy person. And all of these are the same. So the 49 Market is felt. Gina K is felt. This one might even be the best. You can see how that is just made out of like a whole pad of felt layers. Let me get a stamp and I'm going to show you what, and sometimes it comes down to feel. That's going to be the hardest part for me. The hardest part for me to show you. I can't show you how it feels. That's a personal preference. Donna is a firm foam pad girl after her oxides. And oxide is a felt. So, you got both things for different purposes. Diane is asking, how do you remove ink from your fingers? I don't know. I just use soap and water, and sometimes it takes a day or two. You can use the scrubby soap, something with a very mild abrasive will help you. I just say I'm having fun, and I just go with it. Sorry, I don't have a better answer for that, Diane. All right, let me grab a little stamp here. I'm going to grab a couple here. Should have grabbed a whole bunch of blocks at the time. Digging in my drawer here. So there's a solid stamp. Let me grab a more solid sentiment. And then I'm going to come to my set because this is from my ribbon die, and all of these are very detailed. So let me grab, what one will I grab here? There is strength in your smile. So let's put that on a block as well. And let's just see the difference. We're going to stamp and try all of these different inks. I did have some paper over here. These are all water-based dye inks. So again, we've got 49 Market, we've got Lawn Fawn, we've got Gina K, and we've got some Hero Arts. That one I'm going to throw over there. And then we've got our Catherine Pooler, Simon Hurley, and Concord. And they are all water-based dye ink. They are your most basic kind of ink. They're all water-based, so they should clean fairly easy over time with just soap and water. You can watercolor with these, and even just cleaning your stamp, all you need is water. So tonight I've got my Lawn Fawn stamp chamois, little bit of water on it. If you want a spray bottle, I just find that gets too much water on it, and the chamois is all you need. Diane is asking a different touch with stamping versus sponge and felt. Yes, and that's where I'm digging out these stamps here to show you what the difference is. Now, if you are ever in the store, and I know not everybody is close enough to the store, but if you are someone who can pop into the store, we do have a whole container of the different inks. So if you want to come and try it out yourself, then by all means, come and do that. I'm going to do my best to show you, and we're going to try a couple of different things. So like I said, I want to try this new boardwalk color. So let's crack it open. Crack it open. And so that's boardwalk. Let me zoom out just a little bit. There we go. There's boardwalk. That's our nice juicy foam pad. And then let's go back over here. Here's purple for you, Ellen. This is juice box. We're going to go over here. So this is felt. This is foam. When I am stamping on felt, I tend to push a little bit more firmly, and I do a twist, twist, pat, pat. What that'll do is it'll help you get nice, even coverage on your ink pad. And then I'm going to go straight down and straight up. Now there are some little imperfections in there. That's partly because it's the first time I'm stamping with this one tonight, so it had some dry spots. I also didn't check very well. If I look at it now, it's going to be nice and smooth. And there we go. You can afford to be a little bit more aggressive with a felt pad. Now, regardless of what kind of ink you use, I do recommend that when you're stamping, don't just go like this and bounce it. You want to hold it onto the paper, let that ink absorb just a couple of seconds into your paper, and you can see the difference in the amount of ink you get into your paper. And that's ultimately where we want it. This is just a transportation system. We're taking it from the pad to the paper in this particular shape, but you need to let it do its magic. Now, I'm going to move over here to boardwalk and to this Catherine Pooler. I was going to say Concord, but it's Catherine Pooler. Now, if I did the same thing as I did with the felt one, and I pushed really hard, look what happens. You get blue, or whatever color you're using, everywhere. With a foam pad, you just want a nice light kiss. And see, now I'm going to be a Smurf tonight, getting the blue kind of everywhere. So instead of pushing hard, I'm not doing the twist, twist, pat, pat. I'm simply just going to touch the surface. Maybe give it a slight pat, and you can see that my coverage is exceptional. But it takes practice. Because I learned on felt, and I have been stamping predominantly with felt pads for 20 years, this is hard for me. I have to be very conscious. We used some Concord and Catherine Pooler at our Make and Mingle earlier this month, and I noticed with everyone who did the project, you got ink everywhere because you were pushing too hard. And it's just, it becomes a practice thing. So back to your question, Diane, there is definitely a different touch whether you're using foam or whether you're using felt. And that's part of the preference. So I absolutely encourage everyone to try both kinds and figure out which one they like. Now I'm going to switch. Let's switch to Concord. Let's switch to Gina. Yep, keeping purple over here on the felt side. And I'm going to switch to this particular sentiment here, which is you are my absolute favorite. Now, something like this is harder on the smaller pad, so sometimes I will apply the ink to the stamp instead of the other way around. But you can see I can be quite aggressive. I can push hard, I can twist it, and that's going to give me my image there. it's quite faint. So sometimes it's hard to get a lot of ink from a felt pad. Now, this could also be that this ink pad needs to be re-inked. Re-inker is simply bottles of ink that you then apply to the pad to give it some more juice, and I'll show that in just a moment. Let me change the color. Let's go to a new color that I know is pretty juicy because I haven't used it that much. But again, with felt, you can afford to be a little bit more aggressive, stamp and hold. But someone was saying, you know, they want nice clean images. I personally find sometimes felt with a sentiment does not give me the crisp image I want. It was great up here with the solid image, but with the sentiment, maybe not always the best choice. Let's clean and go over to Concord here. Bless you, Matt. Matt is setting up new goodies for us tomorrow night. Yeah, see, I'm thinking this one may need to be re-inked as well. So the smaller pads, you can be a little bit more aggressive over here. But you can see it's got a little bit cleaner. Probably also needs to be re-inked. So let's try it on. Let's go back to Boardwalk. Boardwalk again. Let's be gentle and stamp. And we'll come back to sentiments in just a minute, but you've got some different options there. Then we go to a more detailed sentiment. And I know when I was doing a live with you guys here a couple weeks ago, I think I used a Catherine Pooler, very juicy Catherine Pooler ink on a detailed sentiment like this, and it really, so I don't know if you can see, like it fills in some of the holes, it fills in some of the areas, so sometimes that foam pad is a little bit too juicy. Though sometimes it's not. It's okay. I'm going to show you options. Then if I come over here to a felt, let's try Fresh Lawn, nice PCW green. And that gives you a pretty good image as well. So, water-based dye ink for basic stamping, you've got lots of choices. Your first choice is going to be, do you like the squishiness versus the firmness of a felt? And then really your second choice after that is simply color palette. So if you want some beautiful purples, I know Gina's got some lovely purples. 49 Market is starting to build up their purples, or if you want more of the teals and that kind of thing, you just kind of have to look at the color palette and see which one calls to you. Everybody has different favorite colors, and you just got to try all the things. Now, as always, I think I have suggested this in the past with your markers. I do highly recommend that you create some sort of system to swatch your inks, because what it looks like on the package is not always what it looks like on the actual ink. This one actually looks a little bit darker than it does when it's stamped out. Also, when inks dry, they do change colors. So having a nice swatched out reference for yourself gives you a real sense of what the color actually looks like. It also means you can grab all your swatches and take a look and say, okay, I really want to buy myself a new ink. And right now, you know, if I looked at all my ink swatches, I can say I actually don't have a lot of purples. So that might be where I will look the next time I go shopping. That's what I suggest with markers. And the same will go for inks. If you're working on a project and you're like, gosh darn it, I wish I had a nice deep orange. Write it down on a little notepad. Write it down on a post-it note. Every time you say to yourself, I need a deep orange, give it a little check mark. Then when you've got 3 or 4 check marks, you know that this is a color that you are going to use over and over and over again, and it's not project specific. If you are someone who's like, well, I'm doing a Halloween project, so I need a dark orange for this Halloween project, but I'll probably never ever use it again because orange isn't a color that I use, then it'll also help inform you whether you're going to do a big pad or a small pad, or maybe just call up a friend and say, hey, I'm doing this Halloween card. I'm never going to use orange again. Can I just borrow an orange ink? So that way you've got some options there in terms of the colors that you want to use. So that is stamping ink. All of these inks that I have shown you tonight will also work for ink blending. So with your ink blending brushes, they all give you really great coverage. Again, it comes back to how juicy your pad is. And maybe this is where I will take an opportunity to show you how to re-ink and add ink to your ink pad. Diane says you can use orange with another color to create another new color. Absolutely. You definitely can mix, more so if you are ink blending or watercoloring. Straight stamping is a little bit hard to mix colors, but definitely if you can think of 3 projects where you're going to use that color, then it is absolutely worth adding it to your stash. Sorry, I just need to grab a little sip of water. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about re-inkers. And I'm pretty certain my salted caramel, which I use all the time, needs some inking. Let me just test it out here with this little solid guy. It's actually not too bad, but it could definitely be a lot more vibrant, a lot more solid compared to, say, these guys up here. Those are pretty faint. So what I'm going to do is re-ink, and I just need to walk around the other side of my desk for a second. Here we go. I'm just grabbing one of my little palette knives, my little spatulas. You could use the edge of a bone folder if you wanted to. You just want a flat edge because that's going to help us spread the ink around. So ink comes in a little bottle here. You will get more than one ink, one re-inking out of a bottle. These will last a good long time. If you're doing something like oxide, which we'll talk about in a little bit, really make sure you shake it up well. Regular water-based ink, don't need to shake too much. Here's my pad. I'm simply going to take my re-inker, and they're all a little bit different. This one's got a long skinny nozzle. Distress inks are in a dropper format. Oh, Diane says, make sure the lid is tight. Sorry, I'm just trying to read some. Sandra's saying, am I doing something wrong? I can only see the first 4 comments and I'm supposedly on live chat. I'm sorry, Sandra. Unfortunately, I'm not able to help you with that. Feel free to, I'm seeing your comments. A lot of the comments are coming from Facebook, not YouTube. So maybe that's why you're only seeing a few comments. And definitely feel free to just chime in with your questions as well. I will repeat the question and definitely cover all of that information. Kim is saying she's late, but perfect timing. She's nervous to try re-inking, so you're excited to learn this. Okay, this is a really important, but not scary. I mean, it's scary the first time. My best advice is do a little bit at a time. So I'm going to take my re-inker. I don't need to shake it as it's a dye-based ink. Nothing's separated. And I'm just going to do a little zigzag pattern across my pad. See how quickly that's soaked in? That means this pad really needs it. Okay, I'm going to do it again. I didn't even have time to get my palette knife out. If the ink is sitting on the top, and I'll do an oxide one later on. But see how it's starting to just sit? It's still a little bit glossy, but yeah, this tells you just how dry this is in terms of how quickly this is soaking in. But say it is sitting on the top, you're just going to use the side of your palette knife and spread it over the pad. All right. I've done that, 3-4 times now. I'm going to stop, and this is where you're going to test before you continue. So we saw, let me flip this around. We saw these guys here. Now if I stamp again, look at how much juicier that was. Look at how much more solid that image is. And do it again. And there we go. If I was still getting it to look dry over here, I can go back and add more. But this is again where you want to just really focus on doing a little bit at a time. When it stops super soaking in like this is, that's when you can stop. Sometimes I like to do this just before I go to bed as well. I'll do a couple of layers of this and then put the lid on and let it sit overnight. Then come back and try again. Kim says, is it possible to do too much? Yes, it is possible to do too much. That's why you want to do a little bit at a time and test it out. Now, what happens if you've got too much on there? Don't sweat. It can be fixed. That's when you're going to take a piece of paper towel and just blot. And this is going to pull up any excess ink that might be in there. I hate to say it. Personally, I love a nice juicy ink because you are getting those nice crisp images there. However, if you get too much and it sits on the surface and then it dries, you get this kind of layer on your ink pad, and because it's too saturated, it's not sinking in. That's when you're going to ruin your pad. So you really are better to do a little bit at a time and just test and judge. So Kim, I hope that makes sense. I hope everyone understands that, re-inking it, when we did the PhD challenge last year, one of our tasks, our assignments was give your supplies a spa day. This is something you could do if you feel like you want to be in your craft room, you feel like you want to be doing something, but maybe you're not feeling particularly creative. Get your ink pads out and spend some time. Test it first. See what it's looking like. If it's stamping crisply and cleanly, you don't need to add any more. But take a baby wipe. Go around the edges, because then that's going to make sure that your lid is closing tight. Always make sure your lids are closed tight. If you have labels, make sure they're not peeling off. Give your tools a spa day. And you don't have to do it all at once. Pick one brand. Pick one set of inks. Pick one container and give it a spa day. So that is basic water-based ink. And we're already 35 minutes in. We've really just touched one kind of ink. As I've shown here, these inks work to me best on images as well as some of the larger sentiments. However, detailed sentiments, I have another brand that I like better that gives me the crispest, the cleanest images possible. So when I go to do sentiments, especially detailed ones, I like to use either my VersaFine Clair or my VersaFine. And your first question you're going to ask me is, but Sheri, what is the difference? Well, when the company, I believe this is Sukaneko, when they first came out with inks, VersaFine was their only line of inks, and they had only dark colors. So they had black, they had navy blue, they've got a deep olive, they've got a dark brown, they've got a couple of dark reds. But then people kept coming to them and saying, I love your ink, but I want it in brighter colors. I want it in more vibrant colors. And so they came out and they had to change the formulation just a little bit. So they gave it a new name, and that is VersaFine Clair. And a lot of the colors in the VersaFine Clair are a lot brighter, a lot more cheerful. Great, again, for stamping, whether it is for sentiments or other things. But even within VersaFine Clair, they came out with a black. So both brands have a black. Nocturne is more of a warm black. Onyx Black is more of a cool black. It's got a blue tone to it. Now, that's me giving you the theory. When I stamp these side by side, I often can't tell the difference. So if you want a nice crisp black, either one of these will do. I'm going to grab another piece of cardstock here and just show you all the things. So let's start by doing this sentiment. And I'm being dramatic here, so I'm using this boardwalk, using Catherine Pooler. And when I do this, it's not the cleanest, not the crispest, not really what this ink was designed for. Love Catherine Pooler for a lot of different things, but sentiments is not one of them. The VersaFine inks are more of an oil-based ink, so they will not react with water. This is the VersaFine. Let's do that one first. And again, you want to push it down firmly. Try not to rock. Let the ink soak into your paper. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Just to show you the difference, I'm going to put these side by side. Let's do Nocturne next. So where the Catherine Pooler and all those other ones I showed you at the top, will react with water. They will clean very well with water. These ones will not. So VersaFine and VersaFine Clair are also really good if you are watercoloring. So this one is Onyx, I always get it wrong. It is Onyx Black. This one is Nocturne. Again, I can't really see the difference. I wonder if I do, let's see if this one will give us a different look in the black. They're very, very similar, so either one will work for you. These do also have re-inkers, so you do not need to buy a new ink pad every single time. Okay, so I got it backwards, and it probably isn't showing up super well on the camera. To me, the Onyx Black is the warmer, the Nocturne is the cooler black. But unless you've got them side by side, no one's going to know the difference. I really, really love how crisp that sentiment is, though. It is absolutely my go-to when I do my sentiments. Donna agrees. She uses, lots of you are chiming in that the VersaFines are good for sentiments. And then Kim is asking, not sure if you've already covered it. I just started to invest in the Stellar inks, but can you explain the difference between the ink pad materials of Stellar and 49 and Market? Why should I care, and do I need to change how I use them? Okay, so that's a good opportunity for a quick recap, Kim. So let me go over that again. Stellar ink, let me zoom out so we've got lots of room. Stellar ink is a foam pad. 49 and Market is a felt pad. So they're different. Both of them are great. It just comes down to what your preference is. The foam inks are going to be squishier, so you're going to need a lighter touch. The felt pads have a little bit more rigidity to it, so you can afford to be a little bit more aggressive when you're inking. You need to be a little bit more aggressive to get the ink coverage on there. So why should you care? Really, it's a preference thing. If I would say try both. If you like them both, then just go by color choice. If you prefer a foam over a felt or vice versa, then lean one way or the other. And do I need to change how I'm using them? Absolutely not. They are all great for stamping, ink blending, stenciling, watercoloring, you name it. All right. One last thing about the VersaFines. Because they are an oil base, they are just that smidgen, little bit more slow drying. Now, I just stamped this. I can run my hand over it. I don't get any smearing or smudging. However, you can use embossing powder on top of these. Not so much these guys, but these ones you can use embossing powder. So if you wanted to add black to be even more black, if you wanted clear just to give a glisten or a shine, you absolutely could do that with the VersaFine and VersaFine Clair. These are both waterproof, so they are good for use with watercolors. So with my storybook illustrations class that's coming up, these are the inks that I'm going to be using for my stamped images that I'm then going to watercolor. Do not use these with your Copic markers. These are not alcohol ink friendly. So if you are looking for something that is a little bit more multi-purpose, that might be a bit of a challenge, to be totally honest. But let's talk about that next, because we're moving from blacks. We started with color. We're going to move from black. We're still talking about stamping, but now we're adding in extra elements like the watercolor and the markers. Kim is asking, it doesn't matter what kind of stamp materials. Nope, absolutely not. You can use any kind of any kind of stamp with any of these kinds of inks. One thing, and I've talked about this before, I did not talk about it this time because I've already used these. Specifically with your clear stamps, you do want to season them. Let me grab this. Let me grab this big one in the center here. Seasoning your stamps will take off the any kind of residue that you might have from the manufacturing process. So especially with a solid stamp like this, and maybe I've used this one, I can't really tell, but polymer is made by pouring into a mold. And you sometimes get layers of residue from the polymer just kind of sitting on the top. So when you go to stamp, you might not get a great image. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. I'm going to just fake it. Part of that's how I applied the ink, but you can see that there are some blotchy bits there. If you ever don't get a solid image, it could be that your stamp has not been seasoned. Do not season it when there's still ink on it. Kim, there is no such thing as a dumb question. Like anything, my recommendation, if inking and stamping scares you, is just get them out and play. Get them out and play, stamp them, change colors, clean them, move around. The only way you're going to get more comfortable is to use them. I love my inks. Love my inks. Would absolutely be lost without my inks. And hopefully I'm going to give you the confidence tonight to play around with them and get out there and get inky. Get your hands covered like I am. Okay, back to seasoning. Couple different ways you can do it. Excuse me. I knew this was going to be an evening where I talked a lot. A couple of different tools. So you could just take a white eraser and you're going to rub across the surface. I'm only going to do part just to show you. That's one way to take the residue off. Then you would clean it with your stamp chamois before you applied ink, and that's one way. The other way is if you have one of these adhesive erasers. Again, you're just going to rub across the surface to get that residue off. You don't have these. There's one tool you will always have with you, and that is the inside of your arm. Just going to do this. Give yourself a little exfoliation, and this is where I say make sure there's no ink on your stamp, because you don't want ink all up and down your arm. And now you've got all your epithelial cells on here, but you have taken off all the residue. Then you're going to take your cleaning tool, your stamp chamois, your baby wipe. You're going to clean this off. My baby wipes my chamois getting a little dry, so I'm just going to spritz it with some water. Okay, that's all clean now. Let's try it again. Again, this is a very juicy ink, so I'm not worried too much about voila. See the difference just between not seasoned and seasoned? Again, solid stamp like this, you are going to want to let it sit for a minute as it soaks into the paper. It is going to dry unevenly until it has completely dried, and then your ink color should be nice and even across. Donna says she sometimes finds that paper plays a factor, but yes, paper could be a whole different thing. For stamping, I definitely prefer a nice smooth paper. This was just white paper I had in my stash. I'm not even sure what brand it is. The Nina, the Solar White. Smooth surfaces are going to give you a much better image. The last tip, and this is supposed to be about inks, not about stamping, but that's okay. And notice I'm using blocks. We haven't even got into stamping tools and that kind of thing. But if you have an old mouse pad, or this is the foam pad that came out of my Misty, put that underneath your paper. Let me just change colors because I want to change colors. By having something that has a little bit of give underneath it, it's going to allow you to give that extra little bit of pressure into your paper without it deforming the stamp. But once again, it's going to give you a crisp image underneath. Okay. Before I move on to marker-friendly inks, do we have any other questions? First thing you're going to ask yourself when you're thinking about ink for stamping is whether you like the squishy surface or whether you like the firm surface of the felt. Second question you're going to ask is, do I want a big pad or a small pad? And then the third question you're going to ask is, what am I stamping? So solid stamp versus outline stamp versus sentiments. And then it comes down to your color choice. Do you prefer purple over pink, over orange, over blue? Do you already have 7 blues and feel like you need some reds? Are you working on a Christmas project so you need red and green? Those are the things, and I will tell you, years and years of serving crafters in our store, if you know your purpose, if you know your project, it's going to be so much easier to find something that you are happy with. Okay, so let's now move on to black inks. Continuing on with black inks and talking about marker. If you are someone who likes to watercolor, then again, my recommendation is the VersaFine or the VersaFine Clair. These are waterproof. Archival ink is a very similar kind of ink to this, also waterproof. However, Ellen says she needs all the purples. Yep. If that is your color and that is the color that you go to all the time, then get all the purples. Get all the purples and all the brands and don't worry about anything else. But sometimes you might want a couple other colors like a green. Green is foliage. Green is Can be Halloween monsters, all that good stuff. All right, alcohol ink friendly. Let me grab. Oh, did I not grab a memento? Okay, I gotta grab one more from my bag of tricks. Here. No word of a lie, people. I have a whole storage bag that is all just black and white ink. So, and let's grab this guy as well. We'll talk about him in a second. When it comes to alcohol-friendly ink, and this is if you are someone who likes to use your Copic markers, your Olo markers, if you have the old Chameleon markers, the old Colorista ones, anything that you're using an alcohol-based ink to color with, you are going to want a ink that says it is alcohol ink friendly. See if I can bring in closer here. For example, Lawn Fawn writes it right on their package. Alcohol marker friendly. Memento actually doesn't say it, but this was the original. This is the one that when I started coloring 18 years ago, this is the ink that I used to color with, and it's the one that I go back to time and time again. Hero Arts, that label doesn't show, but their intensified black is also alcohol ink friendly, and the Gina K amalgam ink. These are not all necessarily the exact same formulation. I do believe, and again, I've only got the cube, so it doesn't say as well on those ones. I believe, and Darlene, if you are watching, I think you can use Gina K to watercolor as well. Memento, not recommended. These two guys, probably wouldn't recommend it. Black ink can be your nemesis. You want to make sure that you are testing and trying on scrap paper before you go and do your masterpiece. Over time, you will come to know which one you like the most. Like I said, for my Copic coloring, I go back to my Memento time and time again. It is the one for me that works the best. Some of these two, if you find, so Darlene has just confirmed, the amalgam you can use for both watercoloring and alcohol inks. If you are purchasing online, if you are borrowing from someone, and make sure you're reading the label, and if you're not sure, test it on some scrap paper, test it out, or ask an expert. Everybody has a different preference. I have tried these guys, and I still find that I have trouble with these smearing, and black looks really messy when it's smearing. But I know people that absolutely swear by these. So everybody's is a little bit different. So try them all out. Again, this is where cubes is a great place to start. But when you find the one you love, go back to it, buy the big pad, buy the re-inker, and stick with it. Now, you're probably saying to me, well, if I've got these, do I really need these too? That's a you thing. You saw me. I have a whole container of black inks because it's the one I tend to use the most. Personally, while I love my Memento for coloring, when I use it for sentiments, it's not as black. It is a softer color. It doesn't give me the same impact as that. So really depends on what your preference is. Like I said, I love all the things, and it just may mean that it does mean that I have different inks for different purposes. Kim is saying, so I need a Gina K black ink to do watercolor. You could use Gina K or the VersaFines. The VersaFines are also good for watercolor. This is what I will be using for my Josh stamps in the class that we're teaching. Kim, so Personally, if I had to choose, I would go with one of these because you could also use it for your sentiments. But if you want to try the Gina K, sometimes you just don't know until you try, and you have to kiss a few frogs before you find your inky prints. Okay. I think that covers stamping ink. Yes, there's a lot more, and here we are at 9 o'clock. So let's just really touch the surface on some of the other inks. This was really the bulk of what I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight, but there are lots of other inks out there. I'm going to refill this cube, my storage cube. Let's get these guys out of the way and talk about the other inks you could choose from. Whoops. So I bet you guys are saying to me, okay, you've showed us all these stamping inks, but what about that guy Tim? What about that guy Tim and his inks? So that's where distress inks and distress oxides are going to enter the conversation. I consider these technique inks. Can you use them for stamping? Yes. Are they designed for stamping? Not really. Distress ink is a water-based ink, but it does have a different formulation so that you can spritz it, you can layer it, you can do different techniques with it. I personally find that the distress inks are more translucent. Let me flip this over here. So you don't get the same intensity of color as you would with a regular dye-based ink. And I'm not getting great coverage here, but I mean, it's not horrible, but I like my stamping inks better. Tim does a lot of different techniques with these. They are fabulous, and trust me, I have tons of them. I love my distress inks for ink blending. Partly because I'm very familiar with the colors, but partly because that's just the one I tend to lean towards. Distress oxides, on the other hand, are more of a hybrid ink. So they do have a pigment element to it. You can tell Twisted Citron is one of my favorite colors. But you can see, yeah, these really need to be re-inked. Let me grab my foam. So while I said you can't, or they're not designed for stamping, they're not. You still can. The oxides will also show up on dark colors. Diane says she likes them for edging. So if you wanted to edge up your paper, give it that distressed look, any of the inks that we showed tonight will work for that. Karen is on here. She does some amazing blending with the oxide pads. They're just a different kind of ink. And so once again, totally encourage you to try them out. But my personal recommendation is that these are for blends and smooshing and technique type stuff. They're not for stamping. You can put the pigment inks, the oxide inks, you can use with embossing powder and have a lot of fun with them, but I don't consider them a stamping ink. Okay? They are now starting to come in the little cubes. They're not available individually yet, only in sets, but soon. I'm really hopeful soon that these will be available individually so you can just fill in the colors that you want. But wait, there's more. Then we get into things like white inks, metallic inks, embossing inks, and then there's a thing called StazOn. I'm going to save StazOn for the very last. Embossing ink, pretty straightforward. It is a clear, sticky ink. that allows you to use embossing powder. It's really the only reason why you would use this. We like the Wow because it is a slow drying ink. Marion, who is one of the instructors and one of the contacts at Wow, has said that she has stamped with this ink at night and then put the embossing powder on the next day, and it's still stuck. I don't know that I would necessarily try that, but that is what the embossing ink is for. Pigment inks, so where the oxide was a pigment water-based hybrid, these are straight pigment. So they are stickier. I'm just looking for some dark paper over here in my paper stash. They are stickier. They are slow drying. So I definitely recommend with pigment inks like white that you also use it with an embossing powder and or heat set it. But there's that unicorn, Hero Arts unicorn white. Now, if I were to do this though, look, it smears. So you do have to make sure that you put something on it or really, really let it sit to dry. These are just my samples. We have not brought the metallic inks in yet. Still playing with them a little bit. Let's try this guy over here. Also a pigment, so also thicker. Also you need to set it. But that looks pretty cool, doesn't it? With the metallic ink. I'm just going to finish up talking, and then I see there are a few questions, so I will come back to those. I think I can do a whole separate learning live on embossing powders and inks for embossing powders, so that's why I'm not going too much into it. And again, they're pretty specific. You need white for a specific reason. You need embossing ink for a specific reason. I mostly wanted to cover off all of those colored ones as I've done at the beginning. Before I move on, let's talk about StazOn. StazOn is a solvent ink. So we've got water-based dye inks. We've got pigment water-based hybrids, which is what the oxide is. We've got straight pigments. We've got some of those specialty ones like the embossing powder and so on and so forth. StazOn is solvent. This was designed for non-porous surfaces. So if I wanted to take this sentiment and stamp it on a piece of acetate, I would use StazOn. The acetate is not porous. There's nothing for the ink to soak into, so therefore I need that solvent ink. If you are doing glass, I have seen people stamp on dominoes. If you are stamping on metal or plastic, StazOn is your ink to go for. You do need a specific cleaner, and it will very badly stain your stamps. But as long as you're diligent about cleaning it, then it doesn't matter if it's stained, unless you're one of those people that your stamps really need to be clean. StazOn is a funny little duck. Do not, under any circumstances, use StazOn with your Copic markers. It will solidify the nibs, and you won't be able to use it anymore. So that is a specialty ink. We really only carry black. It does come in a few colors, but if you have a specific project in mind, this might be the one for you. All right, that was a lot. I do see there's a few questions in here, so let me jump back here and just answer some of these. I will, like I said, I will post this little handy dandy cheat sheet that we have created once I add that embossing ink there. And I am going to put a QR code so you can come back and find this video as well. After this class, if you have more questions, and sorry, this isn't a class, it's just a live, we're just chatting and talking and learning things, definitely send us an email, info@craftersworkshop.ca, and we're happy to use that and, share what we know about that, or come in the store and see us. Okay, so let's go back here. We talked about oxides, and Karen likes her oxides. Diane likes it for edging. The small cubes, definitely if you have dexterity problems, or not problems, but if you want something that's a little bit more easy to grab onto, the little mini guys definitely give you a little bit more to work with. Plus, price point wise, you can get 2 or 3 little cubes compared to a large one. But once you find your favorites, then I definitely recommend going to a bigger pad. Diane says, can use to do special effects. To make the paper look like wood. And I think Kim said, I'd like to see that. Definitely go back. I've done it a few times. So if you look for faux wood grain in our YouTube library, it'll be in there. And I can definitely pull that out again in a future project. Essentially, let's do a peacock feathers one. Essentially, all you do is you drag, and all of a sudden your paper starts to look like wood grain. And especially if you trim it down, that's really all there is to that. Diane says, inks are more complex than I ever knew. Absolutely. But definitely bring your questions in, bring your ideas in, and we will help you find the right one. There's a lot, because there are a lot of different options. But if you try a couple of things first, go small, don't go complete set syndrome. Again, do as I say, not as I do, because I like to have all the things, just like many of you. But try a few first before you go all in, and try to have a specific project in mind. Will absolutely help you narrow down what options you choose from. So Wendy says, I often use black to stamp and then clear embossing powder if I'm using markers to color an image. No smearing. The one thing to be careful about that, Wendy, is it's my understanding that that there's something in the embossing powder that could damage your nibs of your marker. If you've not had that problem in the past, then that's wonderful. And maybe the clear is better than using, say, a colored embossing powder. But if that works for you, great. It would just be something that I would be cautious of. What I have seen is people stamp, say, in the Memento, do their coloring, and then go back over with an embossing ink or that VersaFine ink and put their embossing powder on afterwards. But that doesn't help with the smearing. So just things to try and be careful of. Metallic ink sounds fabulous. And then Josie's asking, I haven't had luck with white ink pads. They dry quick for me. Is there a shorter lifespan with them? To some degree, yes. Because white is a pigment ink, the ink does tend to sit on the surface a little bit more. So, get rid of that white. Definitely make sure that they are fully closed, not clothed, and get a re-inker to go with it. Sometimes it just may need to be rejuiced, but because that pigment doesn't soak in the same way, a liquid ink, a dye-based ink that's got water to it, it does make it a little bit more problematic. I have come to love the Hero Arts Unicorn ink. I have tried many inks. And again, it's that whole kiss a few frogs before you find that prince that you love, find that ink that you love. This may not be your favorite. It has been my favorite so far, but I also do find that I tend to pair it with an embossing powder to give it that whiter oomph. If the white is just not working for you, Josie, then maybe it's just not in the cards for you. So that's where I would go to more of a clear ink with a white embossing powder, and hopefully that would work better for you. It could be any number of things. It could be where you're storing it. It could be that the one had a crack in it. It could just mean that you need to re-ink it, and you would re-ink the white the same way that you re-inked any of the other ones. Now, I did want to show you got my little, so let me show you, I'm gonna, just because I have it here, a thicker ink is a little bit harder to, actually let me get my Twisted Citron. If I've got one. There we go. When you've got a thicker ink, so the oxides have a little ball in it, shake, ring like a bell, so you can really hear that shake. Same idea. Oop, close up. Try not to touch my phone with my inky fingers. Again, I'm just going to run, but you can see how this is quite a bit thicker. I did not do all the way across. And this is where I would take that palette knife and just kind of try and squeeze it into all the nooks and crannies. Kim, you were asking if it's possible to get too much? See how that's just sitting there on the top of the pad and it's not really soaking in? I'd let it sit for a couple of minutes. If it's still shiny and almost dimensional on your surface, that's where I would grab my paper towel and just blot away the excess so that I'm not leaving too much. I'm not going to get a scummy coat on the top of my ink pad. So you just kind of, if it looks wrong, odds are it is wrong. If it's soaking in right away, you're good to go. The last tip I'm going to give, I think I've got all the questions now. So Diane is asking what white paper would work best for stamping sentiments. Again, I tend to lean towards the Solar White. We carry the Prism brand, but really anything smooth. Smooth is going to give you the best images overall because you're not fighting with the texture of your paper. So the last thing, as much as I said, use a paper towel, the other thing you could do, and Darlene had this happen the other day with a Catherine Pooler ink, where it was just so juicy that when she stamped it, I'm just trying to find, I've moved everything now. So I'm going to grab this back. Let's grab this guy. Let me wipe him off. No, not this guy. Sometimes, especially with the foam pads, here I am just shoving everything around so we've got room here. You may see little bubbles on the foam pad. Because it's like a sponge, it's got air that as you squish it down, the bubbles are going to come out. And you might also get bubbles on your stamp. If you stamp and it's clean, you're good to go. If you're still getting bubbles, and I will do this as a post because I just don't have the photos handy with me, what you can do is blot off on your paper. And even this, you can see how shiny that is. It is a really juicy new pad. So use your paper towel, and use it to blot away some of the ink. It may feel wasteful. I know I saw Chris comment on here. She would say keep it and use it in your junk journal. Use it as a background. I probably would just throw it out. Sorry, Chris. But that's what I do. If you're finding it's too juicy and you're not getting a clean stamp, oops, I'm not even on the camera anymore. Just blot it away. Little bit at a time. Always do a little bit at a time until you get the result that you're looking for. All right, Kim's got another question. Do the pads ever expire? I have noticed that mine have sunk in the middle and are pulling up at the sides. I rarely use them if they're old. So the first thing I would try, Kim, and I did notice that when I was trying to stamp with this guy here, mine's concaving a little bit as well. It probably just needs to be rejuvenated. So the first thing I would try would be to re-ink it. See if you can resaturate that pad. There is also a product that is called Distress Refresh, and that is meant, so where an ink And it's not the right colors, of course, but a re-inker actually adds ink to the pad. The refresh spray will actually, it's almost just adding some moisture. It is rejuvenating. It is rehydrating the pad. So if you have the re-inker, it never hurts to start there, but you could also look into this refresh spray. I believe we've got it in the store. If not, we can definitely get it for you. And it is colorless, so you can use that spray on all the pads whatsoever. Chris is saying, no throwaways. Okay, Chris, I will collect them for you. So Kim, that might be helpful. Yes, there is a certain point where they are just too dry. And if you are not using them, then it could potentially be time to throw them away. But I would make an effort to try to revive them a little bit, especially if they are a color that you love, and give that a try. The inks do have a shelf life. They will not last forever, even if you use them every single day. So take the time to care for them. Make sure that the lids are closed, that they are not stored in a super warm area or a super cold area. Re-ink them. Make sure the edges, and again, do as I say, not as I do. Make sure your edges are clean. Give them a spa day. Take one container out, clean up the lids, re-ink them, rejuvenate them, put them back in their case, and then use them. And if you are finding that there are colors that you are just not using, we talked a little bit off the top about if you write down a color that you want and you keep saying you want it, get it. Well, if this is a color that you never use, don't buy more of it. If you are not a green person and you've got green sitting there and they're going bad, don't buy any more green. So keep track of both the what you want and the what you don't want. Wow, lots and lots of information there, guys. Definitely, ink is something I love talking about. I love using, so definitely ask me any questions. Josie's asking if re-inkers have a shelf life. If you are diligent about capping them, and again, try to make sure your nozzles are clean so that your caps go on tightly. Make sure you give them a shake. I would say everything has a shelf life. Do these have a longer shelf life than, say, an ink pad? I think you're pretty safe. Now, again, make sure you're not storing them where it's too warm or too cold. Keep them in an organized fashion. Don't shake them if the lid's not on tight. All of that good stuff. I know a lot of people, when they buy an ink pad, they will buy the re-inker at the same time. Not a bad habit to get into, so that you just got it handy when you need it. But I don't think you need a re-inker for every single color. I tend to focus on the colors I use most often. Okay. Thank you so much for sticking with me for this long. I hope you learned lots. If nothing else, I hope I've given you the confidence to get out your inks and just play. Grab some scrap paper. Don't worry about it being a project. Just worry about playing. See what it does. See what happens when you overlap them. See what happens when you mix colors. See what happens, stamp different kinds of inks. See what you like. You are going to use it if you love it. And please don't be afraid of it. There's very little that you can do to damage these things, unless I think you really, really have to try to damage an ink pad. So as long as you're just playing and trying and experimenting, you're going to go a long way, and hopefully you'll come even part of the way to loving ink the way I do. All right, folks, have a wonderful evening. Send me any more questions that you think of, and we will talk to you all soon.